Welcome to The Mortgage Voice with Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry. Each week on this program, Jeff and his guests share their expertise, personal anecdotes, and the latest industry news to keep you in the loop. Now, to provide you with insight and help you navigate the consistently changing world of real estate lending, here is your host for The Mortgage Voice, Jeff Barton.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry. 888-713-2929 is our telephone number. If you pick up the phone and give us a call, we can help you with questions you're going to have about what's going on in the mortgage market, what's going on in the real estate market, how is it that I can take advantage of whatever it is and wherever I am right now, and with the help of this particular show. We're on each and every week. Thanks for tuning in. We're on KTHO AM 590. I'm reading this sign. We're in a new studio, by the way. And Daryl, it's a great studio, by the way.
Thank you very much.
No, I really enjoy it. It's bigger, it's brighter, and it just has a nice feel for it. So I appreciate you moving us all.
Good vibe.
Good vibe, yes, absolutely. Also, our radio affiliates out in the Inland Empire, San Bernardino and Riverside, want to say hey to them, KCAA and what is the other one?
KMET.
KMET, and I don't even mean to slight them. They're great, actually. They've been telling us that our audience is growing in their particular market as well as the KCAA market. There's a little overlap, but not quite. And the answers that we give to you don't necessarily come from me all the time. Sometimes they do, based on my research, my experience in the field. I work for Malibu Funding. Malibu Funding 79620 is their NMLS number, and they sponsor the show. They afford me to come on the air each and every week and be silly and talk to you about the things that I can talk to you about and I want to talk to you about. Specifically, what are the rates today? Everybody wants to know that. Interesting. I had a call today from a seller. Now, I often don't get calls from sellers, and there's some legalities involved in that. If you're in a real estate transaction right now and you are selling your property, imagine picking up the phone and calling the buyer's lender. And I'm not talking about, just to get cursory information from the real estate agent, whether you're going to approve the deal or not. And usually, and last week we talked on the show about what a pre-approval is and what exactly you're looking for if you're a buyer in a tight market to be able to provide so that you can get the best possible deal, and also you can get the deal. So this seller called me. He wanted to know, and last week, as I remember telling you, I was talking about DU. What is DU? DU is the finding that you get when you plug into the Fannie Mae website, input the information about the borrower, and they come back with something called approved eligible. What that means is that Fannie Mae will buy the loan from whoever, will approve the loan and fund the loan, which will be your lender. But if you get an approved eligible, it means that most lenders are going to take that loan based on the information put into the DU finding and find a way to fund the loan. And it's pretty straightforward. Certainly, if you have a buyer, you can make money in funding the loan and then selling the loan. So this seller called me today and he said, look, I did get your DU finding. I said, great. And by the way, this is in Texas. As you know, the company I work for works in many different states. Texas is one of them. And he had his Texas on, and he was asking me, and I don't have a Texas accent, so I'm not even going to try. But he was saying, I see that you have this DU finding, but I also see that the buyer has a property in another part of the state. And I'm thinking, yeah, so... Well, and he was saying, okay, so this DU finding, did you check the taxes? Are they W-2? Are they K-1? Are they 1099? What kind of, and I'm thinking, this guy has a lot more sophistication than most sellers, right? Because to know the fact that DU, which is a Fannie Mae product, which gives you an approved eligible, is only as good as the information you put into it. Meaning, you could put all kinds of information in there about a borrower and a purchase address that's false and still get a DU approval. There's no verification. So this seller was sophisticated enough to understand that and call me directly, which normally I don't talk to sellers at all. I just think that there's an ethical issue there, and really most of the information from my standpoint should come through the real estate agent, which and the buyer, of course, has to give permission for us to even enter into any conversation because it could prejudice his particular deal. I don't know the specifics or the nature of the negotiations in the real estate side, so as a lender, I have to be very careful at what I disclose or what I don't disclose. I can't really disclose information on the credit report, for instance, or I can't really disclose every aspect of the borrower's information, both privacy laws and also his income and his Social Security, all this stuff which we gather in order to get the DU approval, which we did gather, which we did input correctly, but he was sophisticated enough to know that you don't have to in order to get DU approved eligible. Now, this may sound all gobbledygook to a lot of you, and I'm sorry to tell you about it, but I politely told the person, and this is straight from the hip, excuse me, I said, I'm not in this for my health. I want to get paid. I'm not like trying to tell this story to you so that you approve the sale and then just throw it against the wall and see if it's going to stick. No, this is my job. This is my profession. If I tell you that this person is approved and I prove to you by showing you the DU eligible and talk to you about the credit score being great and the income being great, you have to be able to trust what the loan officer is telling you. Like I say, I'm not in this for my health. I do this for a living, and I want to be able to support my family while I'm helping the borrower get the house they want. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if the seller is going to approve the deal or not. And quite frankly, I don't know who is going to convince him otherwise that somehow whatever buyer walks in the door has all this together. Now, he was a nice guy. All sellers are really just interested in approving a deal that they think is a fair price and making sure that the person offering on that deal can afford it. I understand that. Believe me, I would do the same thing. But there are certain things in the industry like, you have to trust the professionals that you're working with. Certainly, you're not going to ask escrow what they're doing and how they're doing it and the history of how they're doing it in order to be able to make a decision of whether they're an escrow company for you. Maybe you should ask that of an escrow company, but rarely is there an issue with escrow in terms of delivering and being that neutral third party. Or if it's a title company, maybe you should interview 5 title companies and ask for references. When you're dealing with real estate agents and lenders, if you're a seller, I understand there's nervousness. We're in, and I'm going to talk about it in the next section. In the next segment of the show. We're in a very unusual, difficult economy right now. And there are a lot of indicators that will, and we talked about this too, last 3 shows. There are a lot of indicators which tells people to be nervous. But quite frankly, in any market, there's always a good chance that it's not going to happen overnight. No 2008 is going to happen again in our lifetime. And I'm an old guy, so maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe you're 25 years old and you're thinking, hey, it might happen to me. Well, it probably won't happen to me. That was a once in a generation kind of thing, maybe 2 generations. I know that my father and mother, who were older, passed away many, many years ago. They went through the Depression. Now, there's only one Depression, right? And that's why they call it that. I mean, it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. This 2008 recession, which could be called many things, but it was certainly a mortgage meltdown crash, whatever you think is the best term for it, that is not going to happen the same way right now. We're dealing in an economy which is based solely on for the mortgage market and for the real estate market, it's based on pretty solid and conservative approaches to lending money. Most deals in the past 10 years, and we're going back 10 years now, right? It's 2019. Meltdown was in 2008, 2009 and 10, and we started to recover in 2010. But it's been a steady, slow growth cycle to whereby we're obviously looking at real estate prices which are beyond where they were. But at the same time, we got there because income was verified, the ability to repay was verified, the average FICO score on all loans is over 700, And you can't just sign and dine. There's no such thing as a no income, no asset signature loan anymore. All of these loans, which are that we've talked about on the show, which do that kind of product, i.e. this kind of a no income, maybe a low income, low doc. All of those type of loans are not purchased by Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, which means the private sector has to deal with that. So that's why we're never going to get into a situation in my lifetime, maybe the next 25, 30 years, that we're going to have an issue like that, because we don't have those type of loans being backed by the government. Those are backed by individuals, by companies, by hedge funds. So anyway, we'll get back to it again. Thanks for listening to the show. I'm Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Mortgage Voice with Jeff Barton. We'll be right back with more in just a moment. For more information on today's topic, email Jeff Barton at info@malibufunding.net. Now, back to The Mortgage Voice with your host, Jeff Barton.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry. 888-713-2929 is our telephone number. Pick up the phone, give us a call. We have been talking about mortgages, about the economy, about what goes on in a seller's mind when they're looking at your qualifications if you're a buyer. There's all things in a real estate transaction that are important. A couple of the things that are also important is the economy at large, and we were talking a little bit about that. I wanted to get into that now. If you need to give us a call, 888-713-2929. Our email address, if you have a question and you want to write it down, info@malibufunding.net. They're the sponsors of the show who I work for, and you can send any inquiries there. If you go to malibufunding.net, that is the website for the company, and you go to the About Us or the Loan Officers page, there's 35, 40, maybe more loan officers there that if you wanted to talk to them individually, you can get in touch with them. Some of them have profiles, some of them have contact information, all of them have email addresses, that's for sure, and there are many people on that site who can help you with questions about your loan. Some terrific loan products out there in the marketplace. And if, let's see, we're on YouTube as well. If you go to YouTube, my name is Jeff Barton, and you can look me up, Jeff Barton, the real estate voice, a little bit different than the show on the radio, but very similar. There are hundreds of shows there that you can look. Past shows, present shows, future shows will be on there. All of the radio stations that we're on, except for K Tahoe, carry the show on video or recorded, as we are doing it now for YouTube and for those shows, their live feed during the hour or so that we have the show on air. So you can see us in many different ways. My Twitter account is @Jeff6493. And as I said, there's many ways to get in touch with us. And we always want to hear, we've gotten a bunch of different comments and calls recently about the show. I've been talking about it, but they seem to be more now. Maybe it's because it's summer and people want to buy.
I think that's it. I think it's buying season.
It's buying season, absolutely right. Yeah, we had a couple of calls, one from Las Vegas, and we have a sister real estate show out there that we do about once a month. We go out there, we tape 2 or 3 shows, and we get calls from Vegas, and we get calls certainly from the IE, and really appreciate everybody out there who's listening and wants to pick up the phone. So if you do want to contact us in any of these ways, please do.
I think a lot of people have been complacent over the winter, and it's spring and it's summer and it's time to get active.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think also the weather. I mean, it's not been great. It's been raining and a lot of people have not really gotten out there, but we are seeing the market heat up as well as the weather. Obviously, it was hot today.
Well, everybody thought we were headed back up the ladder on inflation and on certainly on interest rates.
Yeah, no.
And when it smoothed out and didn't happen and sort of turned back down again, everybody got excited.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. There was some interesting, and it's so funny. I was thinking about Donald Trump, and you're going to laugh, right? I was thinking, and I was watching this movie on TV, The Darkest Hours. You see that? Winston Churchill?
Yeah, seen it.
Okay. So everybody hated Churchill, right? Because he was an old drunk. They just thought he was the worst ever. And it reminded me a little of Trump. Not that there's much more than that as parallels, but in certain sense, very similar in terms of the amount of grief and guff and difficulties.
Yeah, people do detest him.
Yes, exactly what I'm trying to get at. And it was interesting how there was a historical analysis done recently, and I read it online at one of the many sites I go to for the show, and it talked really about comparisons between the current administration, the Trump administration, let's say, and the past 4 to 6 presidents, and where they were economically and where certain things were along the way, in order to indicate whether this is a successful presidency in terms of, this 5 criteria versus the other presidents. Let's see. Let's get to a couple of these and talk about them. Positive change is surprisingly strong growth in manufacturing employment. Okay, so one of the measurements was, and always is, and we hear about it, and we seem to lament the fact that the manufacturing done in this country has been shipped out for generations, and now we rank somewhere, inside the top 10, but certainly not where we were once, being China and certainly some of the Latin American countries taking up the most of the manufacturing. A lot of the car parts are manufactured in Mexico, for instance, which is why it was really important that trade agreement happened. And whether it did happen or whether it didn't happen, certainly if you listen to one side versus the other, it's questionable. But the fact is, we need that trade agreement in order to make sure that car parts keep coming from Mexico, and that the cost of your car doesn't go up by $2,000 or $3,000 because they have to outsource it to a different country, which is what's happening with a lot of the Chinese. So manufacturing, where does Trump stand versus the last 4 presidents? What do you think?
Well, I think that he probably has some positive marks as far as bringing some manufacturing back because of the heavy tariffs he started to put on the export and import. But some of there are some manufacturing jobs that he's bringing back that have some nasty output.
It's funny. They went back to Carter on this, Jimmy Carter. Anybody out there who doesn't know who James Earl Carter is, he was the president that was elected after Ford was appointed after Nixon resigned. So we're going back many, many years, and because I was very much into that particular time period, right? That was amazing.
And he's still alive.
And he's still alive. He's written, I think he's 95 years old. He's written, I don't know.
Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah, he's a pretty amazing humanitarian. Maybe or not a good president. He was a one-term guy. So we are looking at Trump's manufacturing numbers versus going back to Carter through, who was after Carter? It was Clinton? No, it was Reagan. Carter, Reagan, Clinton, Bush, Obama, and now Trump. Okay, so we go back 7 presidencies. And it's difficult to look at the numbers. During Carter's administration, there were 1.7 million manufacturing jobs created, right? That's a pretty big number. Well, I don't know if we even have that many manufacturing jobs anymore in this country.
Again, talking gross numbers is one thing, but talking about a percentage of the population is something else. Right?
Well, that's interesting you say that, because they looked at Trump's numbers and they said during his first couple years, 471,000 manufacturing jobs have been created. And because the population is bigger, but manufacturing sector is a lot smaller. So comparing the two, he ranks second behind Carter. Based on the percentages and everything else, which I thought was interesting. Obviously, he's done enough to garner some respect in creating manufacturing jobs if you're just saying he's the one that did it.
If that's true, but B, for the environmentalists and the people that say that some of that manufacturing shouldn't take place in this country at all.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue that at all, because I think when it comes to bread and butter issues, the average Joe just wants a paycheck and be able to pay the rent and, feed his kids. Really, that's all what it is. There were a couple other areas here that we'll get to. One of them, let's see. One of the problems for President Trump and his administrations is they have an economy which is weakening as a result of let's see, what is it here? Yeah, whether the manufacturing sector will come back. And the fact is that it, according to this, lags behind a couple of presidents, and that his approach towards manufacturing is to undercut it by the trade agreement that he won't come to, or the tariffs that he's imposed with China. And that's really hurting the manufacturing sector, because obviously outsourcing other than China, the needs is not bringing the jobs back and is costing the taxpayer, costing the consumer more money.
A lot of companies are going back to insourcing, which is bringing a lot of the outsourced stuff back because of the extrinsic cost
Right.
of taking it outside, the cost of inspection, the cost of
Right.
import export, the cost of surveillance, the cost of
I just think that when we compare different administrations and whether the economy is doing well now versus when, there's that golden, oh, it's Bill Clinton, we want to go back to those days. Well, the difference in the situation, because Clinton outsourced a lot of those manufacturing jobs. He was the one that brought on NAFTA. He thought that CETA was great. He thought all of those trade agreements to outsource. And this was the rise of Walmart, the rise of Target, the rise of the big box store, which has been replaced, of course, by the big box Amazon. Right?
I'm certainly not against manufacturing jobs in the U.S. I've run manufacturing companies
I know you
in the
have.
U.S. and I fully support doing it if it's fiscally and environmentally responsible.
Well, we're going to bring on a guy, next guest, Tom Burt, who works in the solar industry, does solar estimations and works in the energy field, and we'll ask him a little bit about that. Anyway, I'm Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Mortgage Voice with Jeff Barton. We'll be right back with more in just a moment. For more information on today's topic, email Jeff Barton at info@malibufunding.net. Now, back to The Mortgage Voice with your host, Jeff Barton.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry. 888-713-2929, telephone number over here. Give us a call. Talk to us about whatever questions you might have. It is past the spring buying season. By the way, we're about into summer. Kids are going to be out of school. If you need to move, if there's a new job, if there's a better school in a different area, there's all kinds of reasons you're going to need a new mortgage, or you're going to need to talk about the real estate. Everything involved in that whole process is what we do here on the show each and every week. Thanks for tuning in, by the way. Inland Empire, San Bernardino, Riverside counties, and our friends up in Tahoe area. Hi, how are you? Thanks for tuning in. And again, we can bring you some answers that you might not already have. As I said earlier in the show, we got a guy online right now, Tom Burt, who has worked in the solar industry for a long time. He works for California Solar Electric out in Ojai. And he's even doing my own solar, so that's why I wanted to have him on the show, because it's important on a number of aspects, but environmentally and providing energy and clean electric is all good. Tom, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Jeff?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. Give us a quick overview of what you guys do there and how you help the consumer lower their electric bill.
Well, Jeff, we're primarily a residential dealer. We do mostly residential structures, but we do some small commercial. And most of it's rooftop-oriented, but we also do ground mounts. And we believe it's called distributed solar when we put it on people's homes and businesses, as opposed to a large solar farm out in the desert or something like that. So
right.
we believe that's the answer to a lot of the problems that we have for electrical production.
In areas that are remote, isn't this like one of the only ways that you can get reliable energy all the time?
Well, yeah, when you have to make a choice, let's say between PG&E bringing in a line, for 3 miles or whatever, as opposed to putting in solar with batteries, but that's a whole other off-grid situation. Like if you're getting on your home, that's not you're getting batteries, but you're still connected to the grid.
Right.
So you have the grid as a backup as well, whereas a lot of times when you're talking about remote properties, they don't have anything.
Right, and so basically their electricity is coming exclusively from the sun, right?
From the sun, yeah, it's stored in the batteries through the solar panels, yeah.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about the different ways or the different kind of products. I mean, people talk solar and you think, okay, I see all these panels on the roof. I don't really know how many choices you have. What are some of the, differences in options you might be able to offer people?
Well, that's a really good question. There's a lot of talk about cheap solar, how much prices come down, and solar has come down significantly in the last, let's say, 10 years, but a lot of it was forced through the Chinese market.
Right.
The Chinese became a really big player, but we found that there's a big differentiation between the quality in the marketplace, and we tend to sell only a SunPower product, which is the highest quality of solar that you can buy. So you do have choices. There's other panels that are called LG panels that are made in South Korea, not North Korea. And, there's panels that are made in the U.S., not very many, but some of the SunPower panels are, and there's a couple, 3 other companies that are making, well, maybe a half dozen that are making panels exclusively in the United States.
Do you see that the credits that are disappearing this year, and you might want to explain that before I ask my next question?
That's fine. They're not really disappearing. It's a 30% tax credit, it's a federal tax credit that is offered on your 2019 taxes. It will drop to 26% instead of 30% next year on your 2020 taxes, and then it drops again. Then it stays that way for 2 years. So you get 2 years of 26%, and then it goes down to 10. Now, I'm sorry, that's actually not true. It goes down to 10 in commercial properties, but for residential, it goes to 0 after 2 more years. So this is 30% this year, 26% for 2 years, and down to 0, unless Congress reinstates it.
Now,
and that's happened before.
Yeah, that's the question I have for you. How will the solar industry do if, in fact, the credits disappear? Are you at a point right now where it really doesn't matter because the cost has come down significantly, or are you always going to need kind of obviously it helps, right? I mean, somebody who's going to get a credit is really helpful to the business, but I guess that's what I'm asking, because I'm a great proponent, I'm getting it from myself, of solar energy, and I think we could really clean up a lot of the environment if we went solar in a lot of different houses, if it was mandated here both locally and nationally.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, it is mandated now on new construction in the state of California as of 2020. Every new home gets, just homes though, not businesses and or maybe apartments. I'm not sure. I don't think apartments are covered. But you're right. The tax credit is a huge driver. Anybody that tells you it isn't, I think, is mistaken.
Right.
All of the other types of energy production, nuclear and oil production, all have tax credits, and they're all basically they're in perpetuity.
Right.
However you say that. Whereas solar and wind have always been, and wind is affected by this too. They've always been 5, 10, 8-year increments, and because there's a lot of opposition in the fossil fuel industry to the solar tax credits and the wind tax credits. So we need them to continue, and we need to have a bipartisan Congress. And very few times does that happen. Agree on basically extending the credits, and I think forever.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that would really help in so many ways with not only, lowering your bill, which is really what a lot of people think about first, but, keeping the environment as clean as possible by generating, basically pollution-proof, other than the batteries themselves, if you have batteries. But that's not necessarily what most people do, right? Don't most people just plug into the grid?
Well, for now, as you know, I mean, you're going through all this, the installation process, and batteries are not essential right now. They're mostly considered to be for backup, but there also there's going to be, moving into the future, the utilities of the future want people to fill up their batteries with solar and release that solar power at night or during the times when the grid, they want you to absorb the solar power with your batteries when there's times of overproduction, like during the middle of the day in California. And in Hawaii's had run into that specifically. They have too much production in the daytime. So they're actually power dumping, and they need batteries set up on a larger scale to collect the extra solar power. We haven't hit that in California yet, but that would be the goal eventually, is to have everybody have solar and batteries So you're maintaining the grid and basically helping the grid function.
Now, we always hear this from the federal government about the grid itself. Now, you've been in the business a long time, right? This is not...
13, 14 years. Yep.
Right. So, and this grid, it is said, loses about 40% of power just in the transfer from wherever it's made to wherever it's going. Is solar more efficient in that way, or is it still relying upon the same grid technology? And is that really what's important about overhauling the system?
Well, you see, that's where it comes down to. There's like a national grid where the nation is somewhat connected, but it's more like eastern, western, middle of the country grid.
Right.
And then you have your Edison, where we are, and you have down south it's San Diego, and up north it's PG&E. But what happens when you have these big, right now coal plants, let's say out in the Lake Powell area, or even hydro plants, they are losing about 40 to 50% of the power that's produced through transmission. And you would think that could be more efficient, but
right.
Unless they overhaul the lines, they will continue to lose that. So that's when, if you're out there in the desert making solar on a large solar farm, it's the same thing. It's going to be the same. As long as you're using those same inefficient transmission lines, you're losing that power. So that's what I was saying, that the distributed solar, which is when it's on your rooftops and it's used by the structures that it's put on first, is a much better solution. You don't lose the power generated in the transmission.
Tom, thanks very much. We run out of time. I want to have you back just because this is such an interesting topic and also, very much needed here in Southern California. Thanks for coming on the show.
I appreciate it, Jeff. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Tom Burt from California Solar Electric. I'm Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Mortgage Voice with Jeff Barton. We'll be right back with more in just a moment. For more information on today's topic, email Jeff Barton at info@malibufunding.net. Now, back to The Mortgage Voice with your host, Jeff Barton.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry. 888-713-2929 is our telephone number. Pick it up. Give us a call. Ask us questions about what's going on in the real estate market, what's going on in the mortgage market. Maybe you have questions about the specifics of a home inspection. Maybe you've got title issues. There's all kinds of things going on in the marketplace right now, which you probably have some questions about. So please pick up the phone, give us a call. You can certainly email us, info@malibufunding.net. I'm Jeff Barton, and I'm here each and every week. Thanks for tuning in. San Bernardino and Riverside and Tahoe, how are you? And I'm doing well. California real estate market is doing fairly well. We have seen, it's so funny. It's up and down. It's all over the place in terms of whether we're going to go down in the market, whether the mortgage rates are going to go up again. We're talking about the Fed cutting rates once again, maybe a quarter, maybe a half point, maybe 2 times this year. So there's, China, there's, all things going on. How is it affecting your particular area? With us today on the phone, Rebecca Fitzgerald from... who do you work for now, Rebecca?
The realty firm.
Oh, the realty firm. Thank you very much. She's been on the show several times, and she gives us great insight as to what's happening out in the real estate world in Las Vegas, Nevada. Rebecca Fitzgerald. Rebecca, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Jeff?
I'm pretty good. I really can't complain too much. It's busy, but it's also confusing because people aren't quite sure what's happening in the economy. What's happening out in Vegas?
I kind of think there's a little bit of the same going on. I feel like there's, the market is about a 4-month supply. I would say this time last year it was like 1.5 to 2 month supply. Everything was just flying off the shelves, and it was very competitive in the past 2 summers. This year, I feel like things are moving like a little bit slower, which to me kind of seems like more of a healthier market. Because
I agree.
It's kind of concerning if like every time someone sells a house, it's bought immediately, and then the 6-month supply is where the equal median is. So if it takes 6 months to sell at your house, that is actually, while it might not be ideal for you to want to wait that long, it's a healthy economy. So I feel like we're approaching a healthier economy, and that actually will get us to the 6-month point when our economy grows a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think people need to negotiate and buyers need to select and shop around a little bit. It's awful when you're representing a buyer. You probably know this. You're representing some buyers now, I think, as you always do. That you just, you have to push them into, getting a no contingency offer, getting the offer in, getting all their qualifications in. They don't have time to consider, to ponder, to guess. Otherwise, the property's gone. It's better like this, don't you think? Yes?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. It is better if you have some sort of negotiation involved in a situation, and it's not just give me for either side. But I also noticed that a lot of times out here in Vegas, we really do heat up in the summer months for rentals.
Right.
Like things fly off the shelf when it comes to rentals during the summer. It's the same things that might sit. And I've also just noticed that in general, to really get a good deal out here, buying in the winter months, which no one ever does. Like no one listens, but people get really good deals, and so it's kind of in a healthier market. You kind of get that kind of winter complex in the summer as well.
I see. So it's typical to have in the summer months just the rental market also busy as well as the seller's market.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about what's happening in your own personal career. What are you doing?
I'm selling a property that I've had for 2.5 years. It's just gone up a lot in value, and the area, it's kind of getting to the peak of where it was before, and I don't know how much room for growth that area. It's right around the convention center out here. I'll see how much higher it's going to go up, but it's kind of like to settle that. And I'm representing a couple clients, and then, like I said, I'll probably heed my own advice. I'll probably buy another property coming up this winter.
Yeah, right.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I just was thinking, because you're saying it's better to buy in the winter out there, especially for an investor, right? You get a better deal, more choice.
Yes, exactly.
And then where would you say?
Kind of what I'm doing myself.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of the agents, people in the profession, do that. They look around for good deals for themselves as well as represent buyers and sellers. I think that's healthy. I think it shows you, a lot of what buyers and sellers go through if you personally are doing it all the time yourself.
Well, personally, I feel when you, as a real estate agent, start looking at the investor side and start investing yourself, you really start to understand the market a lot better, and you learn things when it's better to sell, and also it makes you be able to make so much more money and have more control over your income opposed to waiting on buyers to sell it.
Yeah, right. Because as good as we like the commissions, they're still not all that great. And when you consider that you have to do, in Vegas, your average property is what, $250,000, and a 2.5%.
Right.
That's it's not that much, right? It's $4,000 or $5,000. You have to make 20 sales a year to make a good living. Whereas if you can flip a property or hold and invest, and then sell later, you can make that in one fell swoop or two. So it's
that's kind of like what I've been playing around with, and currently in my professional life is doing. I'm not trying to go big or anything like that, but just having more control over my personal income. It's really helps me a lot. And you also, like I said, you learn real estate a lot better, and you pay more attention as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think the experience in any business, especially in real estate, where prices are going to go up and down, but the process itself is still pretty much the same. Opportunities can be had, buying low, selling high. I mean, that's the strategy always.
And I mean, it's easy. It's also very easy to do in a 1 or 2 year period because it is going to go up a little bit. If you get a property a little bit on the cheap, and you can have the mortgage cover it. That's a very simple way to make money. Like I said, you can't just go really big and try to because I've seen that happen. I feel like that's a lot of what happened previous recessions. People just did that exact same idea, but did it way too much.
Yeah, and when you say go big, do you mean price or do you mean number of units?
Number of units,
right. Yeah, I think
units because it's just creates more and more of a liability. But if you're, just to kind of transition into investing as an agent, the way a smaller step is able to take that on easier.
Yeah, I think so too. And as you said, we know a lot of people in the business in Las Vegas who do that exact thing. They buy and sell. Some do it a lot, some do it a little. I like the idea because getting experience in doing that, obviously anybody that moves to Vegas, well, a lot of them from California, they're into the investment side. They come there to invest or to, buy and hold for some time and then sell. So that's a great experience. Could you let people know how to get in touch with you if they need a great agent out there?
Yeah, Rebecca Fitzgerald, 512-923-3489 is my number.
Okay, excellent. And where do you see the market heading? Do you think that we're going to see increases? You said it slowed down somewhat. Do you think it's still going to slow down? Are we going to get to that equal point?
I do think we'll kind of get to that equal point. Just kind of people are always like, in the idea or talks of a new presidency that comes around, people always get, suspicious. They're kind of wondering what they're going to do at that point, especially investors. So I think that, just because of the way that our politics in our world is right now, that just weighs so heavy on people's mind that I guess people do get scared. So I feel like it's going to probably equal out. I feel like there is a lot of room for investing here in the senior citizen community. There's so many things for older people to do here. It's like such an active city for that, and I feel like that we do need investors and people to come in and grow that community. So I hope that can kind of transition and happen soon.
Where do you see most of the building going on? The new building, is it all over, or is it just in special areas?
It is all over. There's a lot of rentals that are being built.
Right.
I'm interested to see how that goes with all this construction, because we have $15 billion of project construction. I'm interested to see what happens with this rental market once the construction slows down, which it will.
Yeah, well, that's cyclical out there, and it depends on the economy. And like you say, I don't care where you fall in the political spectrum, but these things sort of ebb and flow, and I think Vegas gets caught up in it a lot.
Yeah, possibly. I think that'll start to change. I think Vegas is kind of a different marketplace, a different city than it was in the past.
No, I agree with you. Rebecca, thanks for coming on the show. We're against the clock here, and we want to have you back, and certainly on the Vegas show when we come out and do that again.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks very much. Rebecca Fitzgerald from
the realty firm.
Thank you, the realty firm. I should know. I'm the broker, for gosh sakes. Anyway, I'm Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Mortgage Voice with Jeff Barton. We'll be right back with more in just a moment. For more information on today's topic, email Jeff Barton at info@malibufunding.net. Now, back to The Mortgage Voice with your host, Jeff Barton.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry. 888-713-2929. Telephone number here. Pick up the phone. Give us a call. Let us help you answer some questions. I'm sure you have plenty of questions. It is the last few days of the spring buying season, and then we get into hot summer, right? Kids are out of school. All things being equal, you probably need a new home, or you're moving school systems, or maybe you're retiring and you want to get rid of that big house because the kids are all gone. Ways to be able to do that, how you're going to do that, things you got to plan for the future. We had on the show Rebecca Fitzgerald, who was talking to us about retirement communities and older people and where to go and what to do. She was saying that Las Vegas, Nevada itself is a terrific place to end up. And several weeks ago, we were talking specifically about, okay, you have this house, you're retiring, or the kids are getting older, people are, moving away, and you just don't want to either pay the monthly mortgage or have the upkeep. So you sell your place, you take the money, you go buy cash in Vegas, and you still have a few $100,000 in the bank. That's what California real estate can do for you. Or South Carolina, where we have some other offices out there, or Virginia, or Florida, or Illinois, any place where California prices don't exist, and there are a lot of them in this country. You could take money out of your house, go someplace else, buy a house cash, and be able to maintain your lifestyle at a much slower pace, and to be able to afford things that maybe you couldn't have, where you're trying to get kids through school and all the things necessary in order to keep up our crazy frenetic pace here in Southern California. And I've been to places where, it's insanely busy, New York City, Chicago, and also places where it's real kickback, New Orleans, Louisiana, and certain places back east, certainly Maine, and a couple of places down in Arizona where I visit. I have family down there as well. So whatever your lifestyle is, and however it is that you're going to decide what to do in the next 5-10 years, if you're retired, now we had on last week, I think it was last week, Terrell came on the show, Terrell Robinson?
Yep.
Big text, right? Talking about retirement and what to do with your future years, if you're planning it now. Let's say you're 40 or 30. He was talking about it. Great guy from WealthWave, talking about how do you get to the next level in your life, age-wise, and still live the same comfort. And as the income slows down, you want to maintain a certain lifestyle. So he was on the show talking about that. It's important to understand what real estate is. I think we talk about investments on the show a lot. We talk about how to take advantage of buying low, selling high, whether you're flipping, whether you're buying and holding, or whether you just raise a family and all of a sudden, 25, 30 years later, the house is empty and your house is worth, 1.5 times, 2 times what you paid for it. All of these things are possible here in Southern California. Now, we have an issue in Southern California, as we do in a lot of places in the country, about rentals. Rebecca talked about it. They're building a ton of rentals in Las Vegas, Nevada. Las Vegas is 2.5 million people. Well, Southern California, Los Angeles County in general, about 16 million people. There are a ton of people. Now, out there in San Bernardino and Riverside counties, we probably have about 5.5 million people. A lot of people in Southern California. And the rental market is absurd because we just aren't building enough properties. And we're not building enough properties for people to be able to afford in terms of purchasing with a mortgage. A lot of people would like to buy, and I know if you're out there thinking, I wish I could, but I'm only making X amount of dollars a month, and my rent is Y amount of dollars a month, and I just can't see a way by which we're going to save up enough money for a down payment to be able to make payments and to be able to afford a mortgage, because real estate prices the way they are. Hey, look, in Rancho, right now, I think the median price is over $500,000. Well, that's big money for somebody who's driving truck or working at a local garage or convenience store where you're making $25,000, $30,000 a year tops. I mean, this is the whole idea, and we've talked about it on the show about guaranteed income. I don't know if we talked about it. I don't know what your opinion on that is.
Well, I mean, just renting is tough these days as well.
Yeah, it is.
You've got these property management companies that are like going in at zero risk, and just to prove your viability, I mean, it's tough these days.
It's very tough. And there's many people who make money but can't qualify through the application process. Where are these people supposed to go? And it's not like they're somehow undocumented or they're somehow in a subverted economy. It's just that for whatever reason, they can't qualify, whether it's credit or whether it's past history or whether it's health. What is it?
Well, I mean, there are reasons people don't own homes. It's
Right.
not because they don't want to. It's
Right.
because they can't for one reason or another. And they're forced in the rental market. And then you've got these management companies, and a lot of them own 60-70% of the rentals in
Yep.
a particular geographic area. And they can't rent because they run the credit checks, or it's more than the rent is more than 40% of their income, or whatever the case may be.
Right, and they look at that stuff. Obviously, they want to make sure that you're not going to not pay the rent. Although, like you said, I mean, you've moved several times. I've had rentals. I have a son up in Oregon who's going through the same thing with the management company. Another son in Washington, up in the Seattle area. Yeah, it's difficult. So we know that we're building 1 million fewer homes that are needed each year. Population being what it is, the millennials certainly becoming more of a force in the buyer's market, even though we've talked about that ad infinitum about why they don't want to buy. But I think it's important to understand that, look, if you're out there and you've got this desire to purchase a house, finding your income, figuring out what you can afford, and then looking for that particular property, don't get discouraged. Find a professional.
But I know I can leave the state and get a place at 25% of what I'm paying now. 25%, not 25% less.
Right.
25%
of what you're paying now. Right. No, there's no question. If you go to most states, it's like that. California, Southern California, and certainly San Bernardino and Riverside qualifies as that. Rentals are difficult because they're not plentiful and they're high. And multinational companies, a lot of them foreign, coming in, building apartment buildings, and management companies controlling the who's in and who's out. It makes it very difficult.
And they don't care.
And of course not. It's a business. Look, I rent from Regis.
Zero risk.
You know Regis, right? The
Yeah.
office company,
Yeah, of
right?
course, yeah.
They're 15,000 locations. 15,000 locations. Do you think if I complained about my rent, which I do,
Yes.
because their add-ons are ridiculous, but if you, they just look at you like, who, what, what's your number? And then let me transfer you to a department who can talk to, you're like, oh, forget it. Either you're out or you're in. You got to pay what you got to pay.
I had an office rental for 5 years.
Right. So you know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a bunch of them out there.
And it came up for renewal, and I called the management company, and they didn't call me back
Of course.
for like three months, right? And so I moved out because, if they didn't call me back, I couldn't renew the lease.
No.
And I moved out, and then they, like 6 months later, they said, well, what happened? You
What
left.
Yeah.
I said, well, because I didn't have a lease. I didn't have a month-to-month. I had no instrument to stay, and so I left because you never called me back.
Right.
So, well, we're busy, but
That's the worst. We're
crazy.
busy.
yeah, we're busy. Well, hey, like me too. you
Yeah,
know?
well, that's always like that, especially when you're dealing with bureaucratic. Now, in the loan business, there's a lot of that. In the real estate business, there's a lot of that. Just because if you can push off on somebody else what you could do in 30 seconds, that's what most people do. Why should I do it? And I'm dealing with that same issue today with a number of different loans that we're dealing with. When you're a correspondent lender or a lender, as Malibu Funding is, there's difficulties in fulfilling what they call the back end, meaning that once the loan is funded, you want that loan purchased off the warehouse line. So there's a lot of different steps that you need to take before that can happen. Each lender or investor, as we call them, has different procedures, and those procedures, of course, are complex because they're not uniformed, and every company makes up their own stuff. So suffice it to say, yes, I know bureaucracy, and it's a mess, all of it. Daryl, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
And I'm Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry. And we'll see you next time.
You're listening to The Mortgage Voice with Jeff Barton. For more on today's topic, visit www.malibufunding.net.